This happened last July. I was 32 and had just moved into a cozy apartment in the city. I wanted to start fresh after my breakup. The building was old and full of character, surrounded by ivy. I thought I finally found a place where I belonged. One muggy evening, I was sketching by the window. The air felt heavy, and I kept getting chills. I glanced outside and saw a shadowy figure standing by the streetlight. At first, I thought it was just someone passing by. Maybe it was nothing. Still, I felt uneasy. I couldn't shake it off. The next few days were strange. I tried to draw, but my mind kept wandering. That figure returned, always standing in the shadows, watching me. I'd look up, and he'd vanish. I thought it was my stress playing tricks on me. But the more I tried to convince myself, the worse it felt. One night, I heard a strange conversation through the thin walls. It was my neighbor, but who was he talking to? I pressed my ear against the wall, heart racing, trying to understand. I caught snippets but couldn't make sense of them. A chill ran down my spine. I thought about the figure outside. I fought to breathe, but it felt like I was trapped. Things got weirder after that. My lights flickered at strange hours. I'd find things missing, only for them to show up again in different places. I worried I was just forgetful. But deep down, I felt something was wrong. Every night, I pulled my curtains tight. I couldn't shake the feeling that someone was watching me. Then, the evening I finally stepped outside, I felt the air shift. I needed fresh air, so I walked down the cobblestone path, trying to clear my mind. My phone buzzed. I turned to see what it was. When I looked back, he was standing there. Just beyond the streetlight. My heart raced. Something felt very wrong. He didn't move. He just stared. I whispered, "What do you want?" My voice felt weak. A rustle came from behind him. I blinked hard. When I looked back, he was gone. Just like that. I stood frozen, unsure if I should run or stay. My world felt fuzzy. I rushed back inside, slamming the door behind me. I locked it tight, heart pounding. I didn't know who he was. A neighbor? A ghost? I kept questioning everything. But I knew one thing, I couldn't shake the feeling he was still out there, watching. My home started to feel like a cage. Days passed, and I felt his presence creeping closer each night. The summer dragged on. The figure never showed up again, but I could feel him in the shadows, waiting. I stayed inside, sketching and watching, believing he was still outside. My heart never calmed. I realized I'd never really escaped. Not truly. The city felt large, but I felt so small. And he was out there, always watching. The nights blurred together. Each time I sat near the window, the fear crept back in, heavy like the oppressive summer heat. I kept my curtains drawn tightly, but my imagination painted scenes outside. The figure lingered in my thoughts, a phantom creeping into the corners of my mind that I decided I needed more clarity, so I called Emily, a close friend from college. I needed to talk, to get things off my chest. When she picked up, I explained everything: the figure, the strange noises, my chaotic thoughts. She listened patiently, but I could hear the skepticism in her voice. "Maybe it's just your mind playing tricks," she suggested. "It's a big change, moving to a new place. Just relax, okay?" I didn't feel relaxed. Was this all in my head? As I hung up, I felt anxious. I needed proof, something tangible to confront my fears. The next day, I decided to explore the building more. Maybe I could find answers. That I ventured down the creaking stairs. The dim light flickered as I descended, casting eerie shadows along the walls. I passed the door to my neighbor's apartment. The muffled voices I had heard before were back, but this time they sounded urgent. I hesitated, leaning closer to eavesdrop. One voice was raised, the other soft and unsettlingly calming. I knocked softly. The voices fell silent. I didn't hear footsteps. I knocked louder. Nothing. I felt a knot in my stomach and pulled away, deciding it was better not to push any further. Back in my apartment, I paced, piecing everything together. A part of me wanted to dismiss it all. Just shadows. Just noises. But another part whispered that something deeper was at play. I glanced at my sketches scattered on the table, each depicting the same figure looming in darkness. It was as if I couldn't escape him even on paper. That evening, I took a deep breath and made myself a strong cup of tea. Just then, there was a knock on my door. My heart dropped. I froze, staring at the door. I waited, listening for any sounds. Maybe it was just a neighbor. But the building was usually quiet at this hour. Tentatively, I approached the door and peered through the peephole. My heart sank. Standing there was the same figure, the man from the street. My mind raced. What did he want? Why was he here? I whispered to myself. Stay calm. You can handle this. But my hands trembled as I reached for the doorknob. Suddenly, I felt the air shift again, a cold breeze brushing against my skin. I pulled back, nerves fraying. Before I could make a choice, the weight of the moment pulled me forward. I opened the door just a crack and peered out. That's when I saw it, a folded piece of paper silently slipping through the doorway and landing at my feet. I blinked, and when I looked up, the figure was gone. I picked up the note, heart pounding. There was something written inside, but I couldn't bring myself to unfold it yet. My fingers felt numb as I stared at the door, half expecting him to return. What did he want from me? What had just happened? I knew the answer lay in that note. But now, I could only wonder what I had just uncovered. I stood frozen for what felt like an eternity, clutching the note in my hand. The silence in my apartment was almost deafening. My heart raced as I thought about what was happening. Had this stranger followed me? Was he waiting for me to discover the truth? Finally, I took a deep breath. I had to know what the note said. I unfolded it slowly, my fingers trembling. The handwriting was jagged, as if rushed. You're not alone, it read. You don't remember me, but I remember you. Meet me tonight by the old oak. The message sent a shiver down my spine. Who was this person? And how did I know them? I felt unsettled, memories floating just out of reach, teasing me with an eerie familiarity. I glanced out the window, peering through the drawn curtains. The street held its usual quietness. The sun was dipping below the horizon, painting the sky in a mix of colors. Night would soon be upon me, bringing back the fear I'd felt these past months. As darkness enveloped my building, I tried to muster some courage. What did I have to lose? Maybe this was a chance to take control of my life again. I decided to go. There was no turning back now. The old oak tree stood in a small park about a block away from my apartment, its silhouette a dark mass against the fading light. I felt exposed as I made my way there, the evening air chillier than I'd anticipated. Shadows danced as I passed under the flickering street lamps, and I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. When I arrived, the park was deserted. I approached the oak tree, my heart racing. I glanced around, looking for any sign of life. Hello. I called out, my voice faltering. Silence. I felt ridiculous, standing by a tree in a quiet park, waiting for a stranger who may not even show. Was I about to become a victim of my fears, standing on the brink of something unknown? Just as I was about to turn back, a rustle broke the stillness. I spun around, squinting into the darkness. There, emerging from the shadows, was a figure. I felt my breath catch in my throat. Did you get my note? He asked, his voice low and resonant. I squinted, trying to make out his features. Who are you? What do you want? He stepped closer, enough for the moonlight to illuminate his face. I felt a chill. It was him, the man from my sketches. My throat tightened as my instincts screamed for me to run. I know you're confused, he said. But you need to listen to me. They're watching you. Before I could respond, a faint noise echoed through the park. I glanced over my shoulder and then back at him. His expression hardened. We don't have much time, he warned. They're coming. I didn't know what to believe. But as the darkness closed in, I felt a mix of fear and overwhelming urgency. What was happening? Then, suddenly, everything went dark. I gasped as the darkness swallowed me whole. My heart hammered in my chest, and I tried to steady my breathing. Fear wrapped around me, suffocating in cold. Where had he gone? Had I imagined everything? Then, just as suddenly, the darkness broke. A flash of light illuminated the clearing, revealing the oak tree and the silhouette of the man. My breath caught again when I noticed someone else appeared behind him. Another figure? Or was I losing my mind? Run! He shouted, his voice cutting through the confusion. I didn't hesitate. I turned on my heels and sprinted down the path, feeling a panic rise. The world blurred around me as I ran, branches reaching for me as I dashed past them. I could hear the footsteps behind me, heavy and purposeful. Were they chasing me? I pushed harder, adrenaline fueling my flight. I didn't look back, not until I reached the edge of the park. I could see the lights of my apartment glowing like a beacon, and I headed straight for them. The familiar streets felt like a lifeline. As I crossed into my building's entrance, I slammed the door shut, locking it behind me. My heart raced as I leaned against it, trying to catch my breath. The silence of the hallway surrounded me, but only for a moment. I could hear muffled voices outside. They were out there. I slowly made my way to my apartment, every creak and whisper echoing in my ears. I wanted to shut myself off from the world. I needed to figure things out. I fumbled for my keys, the metal feeling foreign in my shaky hands. Once inside, I locked the door and collapsed against it, scanning the room for any signs of safety. My phone buzzed, and I nearly jumped out of my skin. I opened the message and saw a name I didn't expect, Isaac. It was a text from him, the last person I would be thought to hear from. I'm worried about you. Call me. I hesitated. Isaac was an old friend, but he didn't know what I was going through. I couldn't involve him in this, not when I didn't even understand it myself. Just then, a noise erupted from outside. Someone was shouting, muffled but clear enough to make me anxious. My muscles tightened, and I instinctively moved to the window. I peered out through the blinds, heart pounding in my throat. That's when I saw it, a dark figure standing under the street lamp, looking up at my window. My blood ran cold. Rebecca! The man shouted, his voice recognizable. It was the stranger from the park. You need to listen to me. They're here. I staggered back, stumbling. What did he mean? What was happening? I wanted to scream, to run back into the dark corners of my mind where everything felt safer. But the tension was building. I could no longer pretend this wasn't happening. The truth was catching up to me, and it was unraveling into something I was too terrified to comprehend. Then I noticed something shifting behind him, lurking in the shadows. A second figure stepping forward. This one seemed smaller, but the way they moved sent shivers down my spine. I didn't know how much longer I could ignore this threat. I had to find out who they were and why they were watching me. But as I glanced back at the window, they were gone. I couldn't shake the nausea pooling in my stomach. My instincts screamed at me to stay inside, yet curiosity gnawed at my common sense. Who was that man? And what did he mean by they're here? I hesitated for only a moment before grabbing my phone. I needed some backup, even if I was reluctant to call Isaac. As I dialed, the silence in my apartment felt oppressive. I paced back and forth, my eyes darting between the window and the door. When Isaac answered, his voice was calm and steady, grounds I desperately needed. Hey, Rebecca. What's wrong? I hesitated, trying to find the words. There's something happening. Someone outside my apartment. I think they're looking for me. What do you mean? Are you safe right now? I think so. I saw this man in the park, and now suddenly, a loud crash interrupted me. The sound came from outside, sharp enough to make me jump. I froze, gripping my phone tighter. Isaac's voice faded into a worried murmur as I strained to listen. What was that? He asked hesitantly. Something just broke, I whispered, moving quietly toward the window once more. I lifted the blinds slightly, just enough to peek out without being seen. My heart raced as I searched for movement. Then I spotted him, the man from the park. He was still there, but now it looked like he was arguing with someone. A figure I hadn't noticed before loomed in the shadows, their face shrouded. My breath caught in my throat as I realized there were more figures stepping out from the darkness, each one clad in dark clothing, their intentions unreadable. I have to go, I said urgently, cutting off Isaac. There's more of them. I think there. Before I could finish, a glint of metal caught my eye. The smaller figure held something in their hand, and my instinct shouted for me to retreat. I ducked back from the window and stumbled into my living room. Panic surged through me, a tide of dread. What were they planning? In the distance, I heard muffled commands, the stranger's voice rising above the others. He sounded desperate, almost pleading. You don't understand. She's the key. I blinked, confusion swirling in my mind. The key to what? I felt a chill twisting in my gut. Whoever these people were, they wanted something from me, and the thought froze me in place that I darted to my phone again, but it slipped from my hands and clattered to the floor. The sound echoed in the silence, and I winced. I couldn't afford to be careless. I had to think, would they try to come inside? Just as I contemplated barricading myself, a loud knock shattered my thoughts, thumping against the front door. My heart dropped. Rebecca. Open up. The man's voice rang out, urgent but strangely calm. I felt trapped. The walls felt like they were closing in. I glanced around the room for anything that could offer protection. Then everything went dark. The lights flickered and died, leaving me in complete blackness. I held my breath, heart pounding. In the suffocating darkness, I could hear muffled whispers outside. I was completely alone with my fear, and I had no idea what was about to happen next. I pressed my back against the wall, the chill of the drywall seeping through my clothes. Thoughts raced in my mind. The knocking was growing impatient, almost frantic, as if he sensed my fear. Rebecca. I need to talk to you. His voice wasn't outside. It was inside my head, ringing like a warning bell. My imagination felt twisted in the dark. Would they break in? I needed a plan. Stumbling through the dark, I reached for the coffee table, trying to locate the nearest object I could use to defend myself. My fingers brushed against a mug, its surface cold. I might as well have been clutching a stone. Every shadow felt like a looming threat. Then, silence, the whispers outside had vanished. I strained my ears, listening for any indication of movement. Just when I thought I could breathe freely, a soft sound came from the door, like a metal object scraping against wood. That I froze, instincts urging me toward the kitchen. If I could reach the knife drawer, but there was no time. My phone buzzed, breaking through the tension. I jumped, my heart thudding against my ribs. Panic surged as I fumbled to find it. The screen illuminated just enough to reveal an unknown number. Isaac? I whispered, almost pleading. He had to know what to do. Whoever is out there, Rebecca, listen to me, you need to get away from the door. His voice was urgent, cutting through the chaos. What do you mean? My voice trembled. You're in danger. I'm on my way, but you have to trust me. They can't find you. Find me? The words twisted my stomach. My breath quickened as I tried to process Isaac's warning. Suddenly, the door rattled violently, splintering my shaky resolve. They were trying to get in. My mind flashed to the man in the park. Was he part of this? I darted into the kitchen, feeling my way along the counters until I reached the drawer. The knife felt reassuring in my hand, the cold metal a stark contrast to my panic. Another loud crash jolted me from my thoughts. I turned, adrenaline flooding my veins as the front door shuttered again. With the knife gripped tightly, I moved to a dim corner, wondering if it would do any good. That's when I heard something that made my blood run cold, a key turning in the lock. "Rebecca, I need you to stay calm." Isaac's voice crackled again, but this time the urgency was joined by fear. "Stay calm." I'm about to be. The door swung open with a loud creak. I held my breath, waiting for the intruder to step in. But instead, I heard a voice call out, smooth and cold, "We know you're in there, Rebecca. You can't hide forever." They knew my name. I had to do something, anything. Just then, amid the chaos, I spotted a glint of light as a phone illuminated a face outside. The shadow was familiar. The man from the park was back. I felt my heartbeat drum loudly in my ears. He wasn't just a stranger. He was part of this madness. And he was here for me. I needed to move. But where could I go? I felt frozen, every nerve in my body screaming for action. The man outside was clearing the threshold. I couldn't let him find me, not when I finally realized the danger I was in. I darted behind the kitchen island, desperate to stay out of sight. The door swung open fully, and I held my breath. The shadows crept in as the unfamiliar figure stepped over the threshold. He paused, surveying the room with cold, calculating eyes. My grip tightened around the knife, my heart pounding like a drum as he took a few steps forward. "Where are you, Rebecca?" He called softly, as if he enjoyed the game. "I just want to talk." I could hear the sly smile in his voice. It made my skin crawl. What did he want? I scanned the kitchen, searching for an escape route. The back door. If I could get to it without making a sound, I shifted, inching toward the hallway, keeping the island between us. Suddenly, I heard a soft thud, followed by the sound of footsteps from the living room. Another figure was entering, silhouetted in the hallway light. Panic soared as I realized I wasn't just dealing with one intruder, there were two. "Check the other side." The new voice barked. It was deeper, more authoritative. My breath caught in my throat. They were working together. Without thinking, I bolted towards the back door. I could hear the commotion behind me, drawers opening and closing, the sound of heavy breaths. The man from the park was closing in. I flung the back door open, feeling the cool night air wash over me. But I didn't pause to take it in. I sprinted down the narrow alley beside my building. Behind me, I heard shouting. They were coming. I didn't dare look back. My mind raced with thoughts of Isaac, desperately trying to remember his words: "Get away, stay hidden, trust him." Just as I turned the corner, my foot caught on a twisted root, sending me sprawling to the ground. Pain shot through my ankle, but I pushed it aside and scrambled to my feet. That's when I heard it, a screeching sound, the unmistakable noise of tires on pavement. That I turned to see headlights cutting through the darkness, the beam illuminating the alleyway. Isaac was here, and I felt a flicker of hope. "Rebecca." His voice filled the air as he jumped out of the car. "Get in." I staggered toward him, my heart racing as I glanced back down the alley. The two men had appeared at the mouth of the alley, their figures cloaked in shadows, and their faces were unreadable. I wasn't safe yet. "Now," Isaac urged, grabbing my shoulders and pushing me toward the passenger seat. I climbed in, my ankle screaming in protest. Just as I put my hand on the door, I heard that voice again, low and chilling. "Run, Rebecca. Run." The words echoed in my mind as Isaac slammed the door shut and jumped into the driver's seat. He started the engine, and I looked back, my breath coming in ragged gasps. Before I could catch my breath, the car lurched forward, tires squealing in protest. But one question swirled in my head: who were they? And how did they know my name? As we sped away from the chaos, I caught a glimpse of the men watching us, their faces unreadable. I didn't feel safe. Not yet. And with that realization, an even deeper dread set in. Rebecca, what happened? Isaac asked, turning his gaze to the road, but I noticed the fear etched across his face as he glanced back at me. I wanted to tell him everything, but the words caught in my throat. I just needed to catch my breath and to find out what was really happening. But just then, I had a terrible idea. What if they were still following us? I tried to keep my composure, but my hands trembled in my lap. The headlights from the passing cars streaked across the windows, and all I could think about was the danger that had just pursued me. Isaac, my voice broke. I took a deep breath. They knew my name. They were looking for me. The look he gave me sent chills down my spine. What do you mean? You didn't tell them anything, did you? I shook my head, but the fear in my veins echoed loudly. No. I swear. But they were in my apartment, and I don't know how they found me. He gripped the wheel tighter, his knuckles turning white. We need to get to a safe place. I'll drive us to my sister's. It's close, and she has extra rooms. I nodded, though dread clawed at my insides. The men I had seen earlier could have been lurking anywhere. Did they have a plan? Was this all about me? As we sped through the streets, the city lights blurred into a cascade of colors. My chest tightened with each glance at the rearview mirror, half expecting to see those dark figures closing in on us. Just keep driving, I whispered, mostly to myself. Just keep driving. We reached Isaac's sister's apartment in what felt like an eternity. He parked quickly, casting one wary glance down the street before us. Stay close, he advised, ushering me out of the car. We moved quickly toward the entrance. Inside, his sister was already up, confusion and concern etched on her face as she caught sight of me. What happened? She asked, her eyes darting between us. There were men. They broke in, I choked out, my breath still shaky. They're looking for me. Isaac's sister ushered us into the living room, locking the door behind her. You can stay here as long as you need. I'll call the police. But I didn't want to involve the police. Something told me this went deeper than simply calling for help. No, wait. I said, panic rising again. They might know where I am, even before you get through. Isaac frowned. What do you suggest then? I hesitated, wrestling with the anxiety bubbling in my stomach. What if we try to figure out who they are before we involve anyone else? He looked at me, concern mixing with determination. You want to confront them? We have no idea what they want or how dangerous they are. I have to. I insisted, my heart racing. I can't just hide forever. I need answers. Before Isaac could respond, I saw him glance toward the window. Fear flickered across his face. What is it? I turned my head to follow his gaze. Outside, a figure moved just beyond the streetlight's reach. My breath hitched in my throat. Someone's out there, I whispered, panic creeping back in. With pounding hearts, we stepped cautiously to the window. Then everything went dark. A sound heavy footsteps and I quickly realized we weren't alone in that living room either. Hide! Isaac hissed. But I froze. I could barely breathe as I faced the blackness creeping toward us from every corner. Who were they? Why were they here? And most importantly, what did they want? Questions swirled in my mind like a storm, leaving me paralyzed with fear. Then there was a thud against the door, and a cold realization hit me it was only just beginning. My heart raced, and I felt the cold sweat on my skin. The thud echoed in my ears, a heavy reminder that we didn't have much time. Looking at Isaac, I saw the fear mirroring my own. What do we do? I whispered, desperation leaking into my voice. Isaac glanced around, searching for an escape. We can't stay here. We need to find a way out. Before I could respond, another thud reverberated through the door, followed by a dragging sound. It was like a nightmare I couldn't wake from. I could feel my pulse quickening. Isaac grabbed my arm, and we edged away from the window, moving quietly into the adjoining kitchen. The dim light was barely enough to help us breathe. My eyes darted around, looking for anything we could use for protection. Just then, I heard the door creaking on its hinges. They were getting in. "Isaac," I began, but my voice faltered. "Shoo!" he hissed. We crouched behind the counter, hearts thumping in sync. I could hear the scraping of shoes on the floor, each sound louder than the last, amplifying my panic. What if they knew we were here? "I'll check the back door," Isaac whispered. He moved carefully, glancing over his shoulder. I held my breath, praying it would hold. I couldn't let them catch us. The thought of being out there in the dark, cornered by those men, made me freeze with fear. Suddenly, a loud crash broke through the tension. Someone had forced their way into the room. Isaac's eyes widened as he backed away from the kitchen. "We need to go." But even as we moved, I heard a voice deep and muffled. "You can't hide forever." My blood ran cold. They knew I was there. In a panic, I sprinted toward the back door, Isaac right behind me. Just as we reached it, I yanked the handle and it wouldn't budge. "It's locked," I shouted, frantically trying to force it open. "Try the window," Isaac urged, and as I turned to follow his lead, I saw the outline of a man filling the doorway. "Please," I begged, my voice barely a whisper. "What do you want from me?" "Answers," he replied, the gravel in his tone sending chills down my spine. The figure rushed further into the room, and everything happened in an instant. Isaac pushed me behind him, an instinctive shield, but I caught a glimpse of the man's face. He wore a mask, but it didn't hide the sharpness in his eyes. "Isaac, run!" I screamed, fear breaking through to my primitive instincts. But Isaac didn't move. Instead, he took a step forward. "You need to leave her alone." Just then, the power flickered back on, illuminating the room. I saw another man behind the first, and every instinct screamed at me to escape. Frantically looking around, I noticed a metal chair nearby. I grabbed it, clutching it like a lifeline. "Get away from us." But the masked man only laughed, a low, menacing sound that twisted my stomach. "You can't fight this, girl. Get out." I saw Isaac's resolve falter, and I acted without thinking. I swung the chair toward the first man, making contact before something hard struck the back of my head. Everything went black in an instant. When I opened my eyes, the world felt strange and muted. I was lying on the floor, but I couldn't see Isaac anywhere. Panic surged through me again. Where was he? That's when I realized I wasn't alone. I sat up slowly, and the masked man stood right in front of me, towering over. I had to find a way out, and fast. I jolted upright, every nerve screaming as awareness flooded back. My head throbbed, and I could hardly focus, but the masked man loomed, a twisted shadow in the half-light of the room. I staggered to my feet, scanning the area for an escape. The faint smell of stale sweat mixed with fear hung in the air. Isaac was nowhere in sight. I swallowed hard, fighting to stay calm even as dread clawed at my insides. "Where is he?" I forced the words out. The masked figure didn't move, a silent sentinel, his gaze piercing through the mask's obscurity. The tension was palpable, thickening the air. "What do you want?" I asked, my heart pounding in rhythm with my racing thoughts. "Answers, Rebecca," he replied, his voice low and deliberate. "You have something we need." It felt like déjà vu. I was wrapping my head around that same phrase again and again, but there were still more questions than answers. "I don't know what you're talking about," I stammered, keeping my distance while searching for anything I could use as a weapon or some form of means to escape. "That's the problem," he said, his voice dripping with menace. "You shouldn't be kept in the dark. Behind him, the shadows flickered as movement caught my eye. I turned just in time to see Isaac emerge from a doorway behind the masked man, his hands raised. "Don't hurt her," he said, breathing heavily. The relief that surged through my veins was quickly eclipsed by a deep-seated dread at what was about to transpire. "Isaac!" I shouted, the fear twisting my stomach into knots. I wanted to rush to him, but I was rooted in place, paralyzed by uncertainty. With a swift motion, the masked man turned to Isaac. "Stay out of this. You don't know what you're dealing with." "Maybe not," Isaac replied, voice steady but eyes darting nervously, "but I want to let you take her." There was resolve in his tone, strength borrowed from desperation. In that moment, the interplay of shadows danced around us like ghosts of my worst nightmares. But something inside stirred, a growing anger at being hunted, at being thrust into this tangled web of threats. I was just starting my life, I found myself saying, my voice stronger now. "And you," I pointed a shaky finger at the masked figure, "don't get to fuck with it." He stepped forward, grabbing Isaac by the collar. "Enough. You think you understand? Your past is more entangled with ours than you realize. You're the key to something bigger." I saw Isaac's resolve waver for a moment. I couldn't let that slip us into darkness. "What did you do to him?" I demanded, panic fueling my bravery. "Nothing you can't fix," the man snapped. "He's in the way." Suddenly, without warning, a noise from the back door echoed through the room, heavy metal scraping against the wood. Startled, the masked man momentarily tightened his grip, turning just enough for me to see an opening. "Now!" Isaac shouted, and it was as if time slowed. I lunged toward him, grabbed a lamp, anything I could use to defend or create a distraction. The clatter was enough. The masked man whirled. Not wasting a second, Isaac and I surged out of the room together, propelled by adrenaline. I could hear shouting behind us but didn't look back. We sprinted through the darkened hall, skirting shadows and gasping for breath, the adrenaline igniting every nerve. The front door was still ajar from our last escape, and we barreled through it, bursting into the cool night air. Behind us, chaos erupted, the thuds of footsteps and shouted commands echoed as we raced away from the apartment, hearts pounding, feet hitting the pavement hard. We dashed into the darkness, and I swore I could hear the masked man shouting our names again, but I didn't stop to hear the words. I ran faster, my mind a flurry of thought. Had they been watching me? Why did they think I was the key? All I wanted was distance from them and from the mounting questions. We turned corner after corner, not knowing where we were headed, just fleeing. Finally, breathless, we came to a halt in a deserted alley. I leaned against the cold wall, trying to calm my frantic heart. What just happened?" I panted, blinking at Isaac, searching for answers in his expression. "They're connected to your past," he replied, rubbing his temples, trying to piece it all together. "Those men, they're not just thugs. They were organized. They know you, Rebecca. There's something they think you're hiding. What could it be?" I felt a chill creep down my spine, resonating with the unresolved fear that clawed at me all summer long. "I don't know, but we need to figure it out," Isaac said. "We can't hide forever." But as I leaned against the wall, I felt a weight settle on my chest. My mind was swirling with everything that had happened, and part of me wondered if I would ever truly escape the shadows lurking behind me. "They're still out there," I whispered, glancing back down the alley, expecting darkness to swallow me whole. "We'll figure this out," he said, determination flashing in his eyes. But even as he spoke, I wondered how we could fight what I didn't understand. I took a deep breath, still grappling with uncertainty of those men, the shadows of my past creeping closer. I nodded, but deep down, fear started to creep back in again. I felt like a piece of a puzzle that didn't belong, caught on the border between the ordinary and something much darker. And as we stood there, uncertainty clinging to every breath, the lingering question loomed larger: who had truly been watching me? It wasn't over yet, the answers were still out there, and if I could escape this, I would have to reckon with the reality I tried to leave behind.